Hello everyone, I'm absolutely delighted to spend some time with you today. Thank you for Kirsty for inviting me to talk about LinkedIn and to present to the CFN conference today. My name's Nigel Cliffe, and I guess I'm what you might call a LinkedIn practitioner. Some people call expert. I'm not really interested in being called an expert, but I spend my life on LinkedIn, so perhaps that qualifies me to spend some time talking to you today. So what I want to talk about is how to succeed on LinkedIn. Many of you will have a LinkedIn profile, but I'm guessing that pretty much many of you also will not necessarily derive any benefit from being on LinkedIn. And therefore, what I'm hoping I will do in the next 20 minutes or so is to share my tips of how you might rethink LinkedIn in order to make it successful for you and help you achieve your goals on LinkedIn. So that's what I'm going to spend my time doing with you today. I guess the first thing that one has to consider on LinkedIn is the profile. Interestingly, I think there are only two things on LinkedIn that we need to do to be successful. And one is have a great profile. As you might imagine, that's the starting point of any relationship. And the second thing is to engage. And it's as simple as that. There are two things to do on LinkedIn. One is have a brilliant profile, and the second thing is engaging. Do those two, and you've got it licked. However, there's a lot of complexity that sits beneath that, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. So let me first of all talk about the profile. You go to many profiles, I'm sure yourselves, and find that you think you have a sort of slightly embarrassed feeling when you've looked at them and thinking that photo is just not appropriate for LinkedIn. Holding the pina colada, wearing the shades, nice tan on the shoulders. Actually, that's probably inappropriate for a profile photo on LinkedIn. Would you agree? Fine on Facebook, that's fine. But this is a business-to-business platform. So typically, we might be dressed in the mode of when I might be seeing a new customer. So when I look at your LinkedIn profile, is it representative of that moment in time when you're going to be in front of a new customer, or is it a little bit Facebook-ish? And if that's not fixed, then we need to get that sorted. A couple of other things I'll tell you about the profile is when I'm talking to you now through the lens of this camera while we're doing this video, my eyes aren't wandering all over the place in this manner, and I'm not talking to the wall next to me here. I'm looking at the lens, I'm looking at you. So an important feature on LinkedIn is to make sure that you're looking at the lens on the profile photo, because we get that one chance to make a first impression with an audience. And if we're doing anything that lessens the maximization of that effect, then we're kind of, we're spoiling the opportunity to make that connection and make that engagement really, really worthwhile. Another feature of the profile photo would be to ensure that we actually get this part of our head in the frame that LinkedIn provides us. It's that circle, that appears around us. So don't have a full torso, certainly don't have the full length body. That just doesn't make any sense, because what happens is that the profile picture goes around LinkedIn really small when you're engaging. When you like or you comment, it appears really tiny. So if you've got anything other than this area, then actually you're becoming less recognizable. And what we don't want to be doing is recognized for our content sharing on LinkedIn as we do it. So why would we not want to maximize that? And listen, I know lots of you thinking to yourself, ooh, that feels really awkward. I don't really want to push my face out there in that way. Get over yourselves, okay? You really have to do this thing. Face only, honestly, it will serve you really, really well if you do it. Other things about the profile, you know that on LinkedIn we have a background image that goes across behind our heads, and so few people maximize the use of that in a way that helps tell the story about what they do and the benefits they can bring to their audience. So I figure that space can be a space where we can use it to help tell the story about the products and services that we might want the audience wish us to be associated with. So sometimes people may incorporate a logo, and that's fine, providing it's not overly salesy, and I might come on to that point later. So, soft logos, soft branding is fine. I don't want to look as though this identity is going to be pitching at me, when I view it. So it wants to be relaxed, it wants to be easy on the eye, and it wants to help tell the story of the message that you wish to get across. Some other features on the profile would be your name is your name. And some people often confuse that field with the desire to add in a telephone number or an email address or some other expression of the industry they serve. And my belief is that field is there for your name only. And in fact, it's against LinkedIn's terms and conditions to actually have anything other than that. So make it your name only. It makes you more easily findable. It looks neat and tidy on LinkedIn. So let's make life simple. One important feature on LinkedIn that many people underutilize is the piece of text that sits underneath your name. So this is what you might call your LinkedIn headline. Through the desktop, you're allowed 120 characters to get your message across. It's like your mission statement, it's like your strapline, it's like your personal brand statement. And getting that message across in 120 characters can be quite difficult. It's a bit like that 15-second elevator pitch that I'm sure you'll be familiar with the concept of. So really important to think, what are the keywords that I'd like to be found for, that my audience would wish to find me for? And how do I get across this sense of how I can help you, the visitor to my profile? So having it in the first person is probably a good idea. So if you've got across what you do, how you do it, and the keywords in that headline, then you've probably done everything you can to maximize the attention of the person who's viewing your profile, who sees that information and goes, that's just what I need. Or conversely, that's not what I need, in which case we're not going to waste each other's time. So it seems like an obvious thing to do to me, to maximize that field of 120 characters. Things like contact information, I'll just throw in there. Don't miss the opportunity not to have your contact information up to date. When we're first degree connected, a person can click on that information and click through to the contact information in that data. So make sure that everything's up to date, the right company web address, not a personal email address. So we're afforded the opportunity of having more than one email address on LinkedIn, for example. And I see a lot of people defaulting to a personal email address. So Nigel kiss@hotmail.com probably doesn't cut it on LinkedIn. So make sure it's the primary address, which is the terminology that LinkedIn give you, is actually the business email address. Don't make it awkward for somebody when they want to follow up on a connection to find that they go to that information and see an inappropriate email address or a personal email address. You're putting that person in an awkward position. So I could give a whole presentation of a couple of hours simply around the profile. What I'd urge you to do is put 20 minutes of an appointment in your diary with yourself to go away from this moment and actually go and check out your own profile. Maximize everything that's going on in there. The about section. So many people underutilize the opportunity to tell the visitor to your profile how you can help them and what you do. So in that about section, this shouldn't be like a CV. This is about your personal story. I sometimes talk about where have I been in life? What's my career to date been consisted of? What am I doing at the present time? Who am I engaging with? And importantly, in the future, what does a successful future look like? And how can I establish that with some context for the visitor to my profile when I'm almost matching my expectations to theirs, and therefore we've got a great opportunity to have an engaged connectivity together. So make sure that you sort of get that essence across. Not missing, of course, the opportunity in your profile, in the about section, to add in your contact details for a visitor to that profile who may not be a connection. So let me explain. Only when I'm connected to somebody through what we will call a first degree connection can I see the data about somebody's contact information. So if I want to offer somebody the opportunity to connect with me, to give me a call, to send me an email, then why not add that information into the about section so that then anybody can have the opportunity of seeing that information, whether they're connected or not. That's a really, really important and very useful tip. And lastly, in the about section, don't miss the opportunity to add rich media into that area. People love clicking on things. So if you've got a video, what about an introductory video of you? What about some documentation? What a PDF, the corporate brochure via a PDF can be a useful thing. Or what about creating a PowerPoint presentation that sums up the benefits that you can bring in your business endeavors to the person that's looking at your profile? My suggestion would be to have two powerful pieces of rich media because they resolve on the desktop at least, nicely to bring in the text that might be associated with them. LinkedIn allows us to have lots more information dropped into that section as rich media, but my recommendation would be to have two good ones that are more likely to be clicked on and viewed than having lots of choice. For example, I have a corporate video on mine which tells the story of what I do in the day in the life of a LinkedIn trainer consultant, and I've gone to some trouble to produce a corporate video that tells that story. So that contrasts quite nicely with some of the other more wacky videos I do in real time that I will post on LinkedIn when in the moment something occurs to me that I want to tell a story about. I can go and talk to a statue in a park. I'm a bit weird, I know that, and have a relationship with a statue whilst telling a story and relating that back to a LinkedIn message. And I know many of you think that's never going to happen. I'm never going to do that. But in order to sort of balance the people who see more of that sort of in the moment personal video material as a part of my content, if I have that corporate video prominent on my profile, then they're more likely to have the opportunity of seeing that too. So it kind of gives a balanced view of the way that you might view me. So okay, whilst finishing on the profile, there are lots and lots of fields in there that you need to fill in. The experience section, all the jobs. People say to me often, should I put all the jobs I've ever had in there? And I kind of say, well, yeah, because that's kind of life's journey. And even if you've had a shift of career at some point, which of course many people have, it still helps me to understand the essence of you. And therefore, if you've had that career change, I'm not left with a gap asking questions about what's gone at that point in life. I'm more inclined to understand and build trust with somebody who's given me the entirety of their history. And with somebody as old as me, that goes back a long time. But that's it. That's me. You learn all about me by understanding everything in the experience section. And the list goes on and on. What do you volunteer for? I had a lovely story that occurred to me on one occasion. I was doing a presentation at Exeter University, and a gentleman afterwards came up to me and said, "Nigel, I really enjoyed your presentation, thank you very much. And my name's Nigel. Hello, Nigel. Nice to meet you, Nigel. Nigel. And he said, I was looking at your profile while you were speaking, and I noticed that you are a trustee of a children's charity. And at the time, I was indeed a trustee of a children's charity. And he said, so am I. So we had that in common too. And we went on to have a conversation, which was really interesting and really nice. And we said, it'd be lovely to continue this conversation. Why don't we take the opportunity later on to have a Skype call, a Zoom call, and have this chat together? And we did. 2 or 3 weeks later, we had this planned session time together. We were on the phone for about an hour, and I exchanged my challenges as a trustee of a charity, that we were always chasing money. We never seemed to have enough funds, and that seemed to occupy all the time and expertise of the committee. And Nigel very kindly exchanged his challenges, which were more technical in terms of the authority and responsibility that as a director we had of a children's charity in particular. What was really nice about that moment is that I seem to recall that was on a Monday, and on a Friday of that week, Nigel had sent me a cheque in the post for my children's charity. How wonderful was that? Entirely as a result of listening to the story I told about my charity. And that came from the volunteer section on LinkedIn, expressing that as a part of the things that I do outside of business, I'm a trustee of a children's charity. What a nice story that is. So you never know what it is that resonates with the person and will attract you to their profile in this journey. Okay. Second thing on LinkedIn that I want to get across, and this is really important, is never sell on LinkedIn. Now, why are we on LinkedIn? We're kind of there in a sense to build relationships with the ultimate aim perhaps of winning business or employing people through recruitment. And there may be a number of reasons why people are on LinkedIn in the first place. But many of them around lead generation. And therefore you might argue that the very essence of LinkedIn is actually around selling. But actually, the rule to be successful on LinkedIn is never to sell. Let me say that again, never sell on LinkedIn. You know the feeling. A connection request comes in, it looks a little bit spammy on the surface, and you've got that hunch that the minute you connect, you're going to get a message from that person trying to sell you something. And usually without any hesitation, the follow-up email comes in. Let me tell you about my new website. Have you seen my new 2-for-1 buy me now offer? And that person and yourself have not afforded a relationship of trust, and therefore to be pitching your wares in at that person almost in the first breath is going to be a fail. It's not going to endear you to that person's profile and to their individual profile. So simply don't do it. Don't sell. The way to be expressive and valuable on LinkedIn is to engage, is to build your personal reputation and build trust in your personal brand. So the whole of this notion of selling on LinkedIn that doesn't work is to reverse the mentality of that process. So instead of it being a place where you go to push your message out, which is typically the methodology of so many people, is be of value to the audience in order that you're building a reputational value and a trust in your personal brand, so that when they're ready to purchase from you, they will come to you. Obviously, having done this for a while, you might imagine I will be saying this, but truly, I attempt to not sell on LinkedIn and just be giving of information and engaging in order that people find what I say and have to share attractive. And when they're ready and the moment arrives that they want what I do, then they will come to me and ask me for it. And that's a wonderful position to be in. But it comes as a result of, in the first place, simply not selling on LinkedIn. So I hope you take that message away, because that's really, really important. I touched in that point about the importance of engaging. And honestly, the best profile in the world won't lead to success on LinkedIn. The success on LinkedIn will come from engaging with the audience. And how does that happen? Well, it's about you taking the time to share content which you find interesting through posts and occasionally an article. But it's also about engaging with other people's content that you find interesting, where you can add your perspective into a conversation that somebody is having. I kind of use in my own head the notion that I ought to spend 80% of my time engaging with other people's content than with necessarily sharing it when it's all about me. LinkedIn is not all about me, it's about you and about me offering value into a network of connections. So engagement comes in two forms: engaging with other people's content and sharing via likes and comments, but also by then engaging with what you can offer your audience. And what's at the root of that? Well, typically I find that sharing knowledge and information and perspectives around my own world is what people resonate with. The things I'm sharing with you today are the most obvious to me, but they're not obvious to the audiences I stand in front of. So what can I add in terms of value to that audience by sharing what I know? And this doesn't need to be complex stuff. Actually, the most simple things can be valuable to an audience that doesn't know what you know. So for me, for example, if I'm doing some training, I will go around the room and ask the room, I'm here to tell you lots of things today. What is it you'd like to know? And I have a flip chart next to me, and I write on the flip chart the things I'd like to know. And I take a photograph of those things that people like to know every time I do a training session, even though I'm never asked a different question to that which I've been asked hundreds of times before, but I still take a photograph at the end of it to remind me what people ask. And I found that's a really good source of intelligent content that I then repurpose to share with my audience about the things I know, because that is obviously the questions that they want to know the answer to. So I find that is a really, really good basis on which to develop a content strategy with which you share with your audience in order to have that engagement. People don't know what you know. You guys in the audience, lots of experience around your financial worlds, be it from tax credits to expenses to mergers and acquisitions. You know all the depth of stuff, and I'm sure in this room that I'm talking to now, there will be incredible intelligence on many, many topics. But how do people looking at your LinkedIn profile know that about you if you're not sharing it with your audience? So really important as part of a content strategy to engage. And I find that sharing knowledge and intelligence on the stuff you know, you will find benefits you hugely. Okay, let me move the thought process on a little bit. I think that at the very essence of my strategy on LinkedIn comes this notion of trust. People will not connect with me, will not purchase my services before they trust my personal brand enough to have that conversation. So in essence, I now figure that every keystroke I make is probably enhancing or deterring from the trust value people have of my personal brand. And therefore, I'm really conscious when doing anything on LinkedIn to do it through the lens of it's building the trust in my personal brand. So I may have disagreements with certain people. I may not agree with everything I see, but I'd always offer an opinion in a highly respectful manner in order that the trust continues to build in my personal profile, if that makes sense. So for me, the essence of everything I do on LinkedIn is about building trust in my personal brand. And I can't emphasize that enough. Every keystroke you make will either enhance or detract from that personal trust. So be really conscious about that. Every time you go on LinkedIn, you do anything, build trust in your brand. Can't emphasize that enough. Another feature on LinkedIn that I find really interesting is that people don't go onto LinkedIn with a strategy. They will spend time answering questions, going onto content that they may find interesting and comment and like and share. But actually, I ask myself, is that helping you develop your personal brand and a strategy around LinkedIn? And what I find is that if you're more refined about the content you share and like and engage with, your whole experience improves as a result of being more strategic on LinkedIn. Really, really important. So somebody once told me that if you spend enough time on any social media platform, you will probably end up watching a video of a cat. I think it's probably true, or a dog, it may be. So it's very easy to waste time on any social media platform, LinkedIn included. And therefore, if I'm going to spend minutes on the platform a day, I want to make sure that I'm maximizing the benefit of those minutes spent and that I've got a target audience in mind. I'm building trust around the things that I know. So for me, for example, if you peel the skin off Nigel, Cliffe, you'll find that I'm about LinkedIn, of course, about digital marketing, about marketing technology, and about the concept of digital disruption. Those are the worlds that I occupy and that I would like to be considered an expert within. So if Donald Trump tweets something ridiculous this morning, I might find it interesting and entertaining, but would I share in it on LinkedIn? Would I comment on it on LinkedIn? No, I wouldn't, because it's not helping me form the right relationship with my audience that expect to hear from me on the subject matters that I'm an expert in. So be mindful of having a strategy on LinkedIn and not wasting time. I would say at best, you could be wasting your time on LinkedIn by not being strategic. And at the worst, you could actually be damaging your whole trust building presence by getting engaged in things that are not related to what you want your audience to understand you of. It's like going to the newspaper, and going to the automotive section and find it's political commentary that's held there. Going to the sports section and find it's about economics. You quickly put the newspaper down because you wouldn't understand what's going on, and that would be confusing, and you wouldn't have the patience to deal with it. Well, LinkedIn's a bit like that. What are the subject matters that you're an expert in? People begin to find you interesting and respect you as a consequence of the things you share. And to do that, we need a strategy. So if you haven't built a strategy so far on LinkedIn, take some time out to think, what is it I want to be known for on LinkedIn, and what's that strategy look like? So as I come towards the end of this presentation, and I hope you've taken away several tips from it, there's one last thing I want to leave you with, and it's this sense of patience. Too many people expect instant fixes from their time spent on LinkedIn. And again, it falls into that same sort of context as selling. It shouldn't be an urgent place. We build our personal brands slowly. Trust is never built in a moment or in a day. It's built over a period of time. Therefore, be patient in building the respect that audience will deliver to you over a period of time. Be consistent in your activity on LinkedIn. Go on LinkedIn and spend a few minutes every day. It isn't something you leave until Friday afternoon for a couple of hours when you happen to have spare time. Be in LinkedIn every day for a little time, and be patient about the relationships you build up over time. And I'm sure that you'll benefit from that over time. So in summary, we've talked about profiles and getting a great profile. I've expressed how not to sell on LinkedIn. That will not do you any favors. The key to success on LinkedIn is about engaging, about building trust, sharing knowledge, have a strategy, and be patient. So I hope that's been helpful today. Really do appreciate your time. I thank you for it. Sorry I couldn't be with you in person today. That was not possible due to me being in another part of the world. But I hope that's been beneficial. And I'd love to connect with any of you that find this information useful to continue to share valuable information between us in the future. Thanks again. Bye for now.